All right, guys. Well, because we could not wait to get back to you guys, it's been a week. Of course, we saw the home run derby, Jazz Chisholm, whatever that was. We saw the All-Star game, whatever that was, a home run derby to end it. I thought that was kind of cool, but still bizarre. But since the Yankees don't play until Friday, we figured, you know what? The draft somehow happened right around the same time as the All-Star break. Really odd timing. But the MLB draft is in the books, and the Yankees have 10 players that we're going to talk about today. And some we like and some we don't. And I don't want to say we don't like the player. We just aren't like thrilled about the draft picks. So we're going to get into it. Before we do, be sure to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. Be sure to hit the like button. Gary, how you doing? And give me your thoughts on Dax Kilby from Noonan High School, a guy that was going to commit to, well, he is committed. We'll see if he signs with the Yankees, but committed to Clemson.
Yeah, that's never a given. And by the way, guys, make sure you subscribe. We are giving away a Yankees jersey at 10,000 subscribers. Be sure to hit the bell, all that, like the video. But this Kilby kid, right? And I know we were just laughing off air. Your dad was saying, we don't want a prep kid, right? You're not maybe going to get a finished product at the 39th pick, right? But having said that, when you're drafting a player that is a shortstop, right? He's young. You want this guy, a bigger body. We accomplished that, right? And that's a good thing. But also, when you read the cons list of his scouting report, and again, this is an 18-year-old kid, right? Very young. But when you read weaker arm, rival scouts across baseball are saying this guy may not be able to stick at shortstop, but he's got plenty of tools. Hit tools are, obviously off the charts. These are good things. But when you see that the Yankees believe he can stay at shortstop, but the rest of the scouts don't, I'm not in love with that, Jake. I'm going to be honest with you. It's not exactly what I was looking for, because when I look at drafts, I tend to look at, you want to see the tools. And then obviously especially in baseball, this isn't the NFL, right? And different scouts are going to get in their ear, and one player may develop much faster or just more efficiently than another player. But you want to see for sure that those tools are there before you enter into the process, into our system. So as far as the hit tools go, I'm happy with this. I have no problem with it. I didn't have a problem. He doesn't have a ton of speed. Again, this is an 18-year-old. I don't mind not having a ton of speed. I'm not, especially in today's game, I'm not looking for someone to go steal me 45 bags. I'm not necessarily in love with that idea of how we score runs, because frankly, when you look across baseball, you see what we have going on with Jazz. You see what's going on with Jason Dominguez. We're not really looking for them to steal bags. We're just not. Speed is more of to advance bases, score from second base, score from first, right? Do those type of things, tools in the field. And it seems like this kid's going to have enough athleticism to go ahead and accomplish those things. But it's more of the defensive tools for me. It's the arm. And the ability to stick at shortstop isn't just about body style and athleticism. It's also just pure strength. Do you have the strength? And yes, every time you think of shortstop, Jake, you think, okay, Carlos Correa, I'm off my back foot, double play ball, I don't have a ton of time. Can I unleash a throw to first base and get an out? Am I the best arm in the infield? And if the answer is no with Dax Kilby, I'm not so sure, Jake.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot, man, right? He got a 55 out of 80 hit grade, 50 out of 80 power grade, and a 55 out of 80 run, a 50 out of 80 arm, a 45 out of 80 field. Typically, and he's overall a 50 out of 80. Typically, prep school kids are going to be in the 50s, so that's not overly alarming. But you don't want anything to be in the 40s normally, that you draft with the, first pick of your draft. I don't even know what to call this, Gary. Is he a first round pick, a second round pick? They just say competitive balance round A.
He's a tweener. When you call him a tweener, this actually, by the way, when we're looking at this player, you're talking about a bigger body. You're talking about a young kid. This is a prep. This is a candidate to go Garrett Cole. I'm going to be drafted by a team. I'm going to go to college. I'm going to essentially go play my 3 years at Clemson, and I'm going to re-enter into the draft, because when you're talking about this body style, and guys at shortstop at 6'3", they don't grow on trees, right? So
No.
this is one of those candidates where I think the Yankees, I'm not telling you guys that the Yankees are going to lose this player to to college, but I am telling you that perhaps it's a possibility. So yeah, I like what else is going on down the draft. I don't love it, but there's certainly much better picks of value than what we saw out of our first pick.
Yeah, I like Dax Kilby for what he is. I mean, I like the offensive, right? He is 18. I didn't want a prep school guy. If you went that way, I would have gone with Oaks Christian, Quentin Young, who could play third base or outfield. I really think he projects as a potential star. I do. I'm very high on him. But that said, they went with Kilby, one of the more polished high school bats in the draft. Short swing, excellent contact skills as a lefty. He had a 9% chase rate.
How do they come up with that,
discipline.
by the way? How do they come up with a chase rate in high school? Isn't that interesting?
You got all sorts of stuff, right? You got, what's the thing that they use? The analytical thing for golf. I'm totally blanking on it, but they got
Top Tracer?
It might be that. There's some other thing as well. My dad literally has it. So, yeah, you got all sorts of, different things there. But, they have different ways to measure that. Damon Oppenheimer, who's kind of the head of scouting for the Yankees, he's been around for a long time. He confirmed that the Yankees did extensive work on Kilby. So it wasn't just like a guy that they, in the moment, were like, yeah, we did no work on this guy, but yeah, he seems nice. So it's good to know that. But no, he said it was a quote unquote pretty easy pick. And they were, essentially kind of sweating this one out because they really liked him. Athletic. They like his potential power profile. I don't really understand that. It doesn't feel like he has that much power. But the Yankees believe also, Gary, you're not going to be happy to hear this.
Okay.
The Yankees believe he's going to be able to stick at shortstop.
Yeah, so, okay. So obviously, from what we read, right, we're reading that the scouts believe he's going to move to second or outfield, right? Mm-hmm. He's got funky arm action, right? Was bothered by a shoulder issue early in his high school career. So I'm not going to freak everybody out. Mind you, went to high school with Cody Bellinger, also dealt with a shoulder injury early on in high school, didn't end up being an issue, ends up re-injuring it in the World Series. So what I am telling you is that when somebody doesn't necessarily profile as a strong thrower, and they also are dealing with injuries to said arm, it's interesting because the Yankees are saying, hold on a second. It almost feels like we're talking about the Seattle Seahawks and Russell Wilson. Everybody else thinks this player's one thing. The Yankee scouts are saying, no, we were freaked out that somebody was going to see what we see. Well, I feel like I've heard that before, Jake. I really do. So obviously, we're going to figure out what this player is probably within a year or two. I know he won't be up in the big league level. We've seen crazier things, but he probably won't be. But having said that, I would say within a year or two, we're going to know exactly what they think of him defensively. I think that's the most important thing here. If he ends up moving to second base within a year or two of his development, I think you'll know then that the Yankees possibly misfired, late in the first round.
ESPN has a player comp of Colt Keith / Ryan McMahon with a chance for a better hit tool. So that's an interesting comparison. Ryan McMahon, of course, has been talked about plenty of times on this channel. Neither of us want to go out and get him at the deadline, but there his name is. And
we like Colt the ceiling of him.
Well, I like Colt Keith. I think he's a solid player for the Tigers. I would take a Colt Keith on this team. Is this the future? And I think that's really what I want to kind of wrap his part up. Can Dax Kilby, let's just end it with this, right? Before we move on to Kaden Kent. Can Dax Kilby develop into the successor for the Yankees at shortstop over Anthony Volpe? And I understand how that sounds. Like, you're like, hold on a sec. He's 18. Anthony Volpe successor. And I'm not even sure if I believe that will even need to happen, because I think there's a chance Anthony Volpe's gone after the year. But you kept bringing that up, the whole arbitration, and that's what I have. But let's just say, for the sake of argument, the Yankees are like, yeah, we're going to keep him. We're going to ride this thing out. And so he goes 3 arbitration periods through, and then they let him go in free agency or what have you. Kilby at that point would be, 22 years old? Literally same exact position. And they see him sticking at shortstop. I mean, do you see this guy? Could he potentially take over for Anthony Volpe if they went that route?
No, I just don't. And mind you, I feel the same way about our 3rd round pick, right? And Kaden Kent. I feel like the Yankees by that point, you're talking again, and you mentioned it, he's 18 years old. We would assume he'll be up at the big leagues, best case scenario, when he's 22. There's nothing wrong with that. Totally normal process. Status quo. 3 or 4 years in the minor leagues. Yeah. Maybe you skip a level here or there, but he'll be 22 or 23 by the time he gets up here. Well, having said that, if we're still looking at Anthony Volpe by 2029, I think the Yankees have bigger problems, right? Anthony Volpe, we've mentioned that, yeah, it's just probably not going to work here in New York. It's just not. It doesn't mean you suck at baseball. Certainly he's not good in 2025. This is not the version of Anthony Volpe that we even saw 2 years ago, right? We would take that version, 2023's version of Anthony Volpe, as opposed to today. So when we talk about successor, obviously people are looking at the scouting reports and they're seeing the draft board and they're saying, okay, the Yankees in the 30-some overall pick, they take a shortstop. Kaden Kent in the 3rd round, they take a shortstop. So people are thinking, oh, the Yankees just want a bunch of shortstops to figure out short. No, shortstop is just where the most athletic player, the player who plays shortstop, you saw with Fernando Tatis Jr., eventually he becomes a right fielder for the remainder of his career, right? This happens all the time. My dad drafted as a shortstop. You don't think of him and think of a shortstop. It just doesn't happen. So I don't look at any of these players as saying, oh yeah, this is the future for the Yankees at short, unless the profile of which you see, okay, the pros and the cons, those tools would be popping off the page for me to say that. So I don't think any of these guys are that, but I want to transition to Kaden Kent because I'm actually higher on him than I am in our 1st round pick. We'll just call it a 1st round pick. And again, when you said you didn't want a prep player, I'm on the same boat. I'm looking for players with a turnaround. They're going to start in A-ball. And I have reason to believe if things go well, and we're talking about the father of a 5-time All-Star, Jeff Kent. So, I'm looking at this and saying, all right, you're 21. Maybe in a year or two, I'm looking down and saying, hey, this kid might be ready to be a utility guy. You obviously look at what Kent can do defensively. This is what I like. He can play short. He can play second. He can play outfield because we're already understanding this is a utility player. And there's nothing wrong with that. But when you say, hey, this is my shortstop, we profile him here, and then everyone else thinks you're wrong, I don't think the Yankees are necessarily the organization I want having this dynamic. I just don't. We're not necessarily the team that says they don't believe in you, but we do, and then they figure it out. So I'm higher on this pick. What do you think, Jake?
Yeah, I like this pick. I like that, there was some added, juice there, according to Brendan Cuddy of The Athletic. Oppenheimer, again, said the team leaned on the insight of the Kent family. And he got that insight from the executive advisor, Brian Sabian, who was the GM when Jeff Kent was a San Francisco Giant. So really cool connection there. But, when you look at this guy, he's 21 years old. Obviously, he's got the pedigree. Yes, Gary, we had to bring that word back.
I've eliminated it from my vocab. It's just it's gone.
But he's got, good lefty contact skills. His walk to strikeout rate is he actually walks more than he strikes out, which is great.
I'd like to see that.
Absolutely raked in the Cape Cod League. And that was a big focal point of the Yankees draft class last year. I think we just made multiple Cape Cod League jokes last year because it was just everybody was just killing it in the Cape Cod League. And of course, for those of you that don't know, that's essentially like an all-star league. Those are the best that you're going up against at your skill level. Not just everybody in college or whatever, but the best of college. Again, the versatility's there. The clutch gene is there. He came up in some big high leverage situations at A&M. So I like this player. I kind of see him as a Rock Regio. Just the power development to me is a question mark. Whereas Reggio all of a sudden just started hitting nukes left and right. But he didn't solidify himself as an everyday player until 2025, which that is a little concerning. He wasn't listed in MLB Pipeline's top 250 prospect list, and his ceiling is considered low. So he's, at 21 years of age, he's considered a high floor, low ceiling guy. And to me, I think he profiles in a lot of ways as like an Oswaldo Cabrera type.
Yeah, I was going to say Marco Scutaro, right? And you don't think Marco Scutaro and think, all right, this guy's going to set it off. And obviously we didn't foresee what he would do in the World Series. But when you think of the ceiling of this player, this isn't like a Carlos Correa. This isn't typical 1-1, right, overall. You don't think that. But when players sort of know, it doesn't matter where I play defensively, it's the hit tool. It's getting on base. This is more of hopping in a time machine and drafting someone from 2007. And I always try to tell people there's nothing wrong with that. We are sort of rebranding how baseball's played. I'd say about 5 years ago, we were content, and you saw with Joey Gallo with the Yankees made that trade. I know, Jake, you hated it, but it was sort of a marriage to that being the right way to play baseball, where a guy's going to show up, I'm going to hit a home run, and if I don't hit a home run, it's perfectly okay for me to just not even put the bat on the ball. I just walk back to the dugout, and I'm going to try the same thing next time I go out there. And that's just the way that the game was accepted. But then you saw the Arizona Diamondbacks make it to a World Series, right, and playing the Texas Rangers, two teams that just rarely struck out. Strikeouts are down in baseball this year. They just are. Stuff's not down on the mound. So it tells you there's a shift. The utility players are somewhat back. They have an impact. They have roles. And I don't know. I was happy about this. I don't have any problem with the Yankees developing utility players as long as they know they are that, where we don't have to go spend $10 to $12 million on an IKF or anybody else to bring him in here. I know we were thinking Rosario, right, this offseason. It was going to cost us a pretty penny. But when you look at a guy like Kaden Kent, maybe you can just come out your system, make it easier.
I agree with that. And I think a lot of respects, that's the whole point of Cabrera for a Peraza, guys like that. So I know it's the New York Yankees and you typically think about spending, or at least that's what they should be thinking. But your minor league system can also put together some good utility guys as well. So can never just scoff at that. Next up, we have a player that there's a lot of people that like this kid, Pico Kohn from Mississippi State, a left-hander. 4th round pick, 55 out of 80 fastball, 55 out of 80 slider, 50 out of 80 changeup, 55 control out of 80, a 45 overall. Not sure if I understand the math there, but okay. So yeah, that's according to MLB Pipeline, 122nd overall prospect. So this is considered a steal for the Yankees here. 22 years of age. Everybody that has talked about him on social media that I've seen, like the accounts that I follow that do this stuff for a living, right? They expect him to travel through the minors very quickly. So that is, again, why we like these type of guys on the New York Yankees instead of just drafting prep school guys, because it takes a while. But with a 22-year-old in the 4th round that has, a killer fastball, a killer slider, well, things can change. So, I like the left-handed starter profile that he has. He can miss bats. He's got a deceptive 3/4 arm slot, effective fastball that currently touches around 95, a quality slider that he can locate. Gary, you'll like this. He's 6'4", 200 pounds. Plenty of room to grow into that body as well and add more velocity. And the important thing here is that he is coming back from Tommy John surgery, but since he came back from it, he has really stayed durable and available. So again, the Tommy John surgery sucks. It cost him 2023 and part of 2024, but he's been very durable since. Just kind of looking at him, I think really the biggest issue with him, command issues, 9% walk rate, 13 home runs given up in 2025. keep in mind that's not 200 innings pitched. So 13 home runs giving up is a lot in college. But he doesn't have like a developed repertoire after that fastball and slider combo. So, he still tries to throw the change. He tries to throw a curveball. But they're going to need to be developed at the next level. So, my projection that I kept reading and seeing about him was, he's a high floor lefty starter. But he's not overpowering, and he's not likely to be more he's likely to be more consistent if he sticks and not be necessarily one of those power pitchers, but more of a finesse one. But what say you about Pico Kohn? Because we talked about this off air. It sounded like you really liked him.
Yeah, first of all, love this. I just do. I think right now what's currently coming through, right? You see Cam Schlittler, you see some guys as far as velocity. These are what you want to see, right? Luis Heel. You want to see big bodies, high velocity, high spin rate. Those are the guys that your top of your rotation. Of course, we're the Yankees. We spend a ton of money, right? You bring in guys like Max Fried, Rodon, Garrett Cole, obviously out for the year, should be returning next year. But you also need these, okay, Pico Kohn, you're talking about a guy where you could be looking up and saying, oh, this is the Jordan Montgomery, right? This is probably a 3 or 4 left-hander. Eventually, they're going to have to work in some type of wrinkle. I know you were saying his fastball isn't necessarily playing. He's giving up a lot of homers. Well, guess who else had that problem? Mr. Carlos Rodon, right? And eventually, we work in the sinker, right? Max Fried, a guy at the top of our rotation right now, he doesn't live on his four-seam fastball. He's working cutters. He's working sinkers. Matt Blake's going to figure that part out. That shouldn't be a problem. But anytime you see a changeup at the top of a pitch mix, I think that's a good thing. Just understanding that we don't have to rely on some big overhand curveball or just some wipeout slider that you love. The changeup's definitely the best pitch to hone in, at least at the beginning of your career. And of course, when we said earlier, we don't like prep kids. We don't necessarily want someone, we have got to wait 3 or 4 years just to figure out what we've got. Well, this guy, if they're projecting to go through the system and through the ranks, it tells you he's not going to be at the top of a rotation. He's probably going to come in, and if we have any type of injuries, this is the type of guy that they can trust with a Cody Poteet role. You can throw him in there, give him starters innings who will be built up for that, and I have no reason to believe that this kid can't stick at the big league level. So I'm excited for this. Is he going to go out there and win a Cy Young? I would say the ceiling is not there for that. It shouldn't be your expectation, but for the Yankees to have depth where you can say, all right, this kid can possibly be up maybe at the tail end of Garrett Cole's career. You can throw somebody else out there, build some innings instead of a Marcus Stroman. Instead, it's someone controllable like Pico. I'll take that.
Yeah, I agree. And, I think the big thing with prep as well is it's not just hating on, the young kids because they're not going to get to the major leagues quicker than some of the other guys normally. It's also they're harder to sign. I hate the idea of ever, drafting a guy in the first round or second round that might not even sign. And guess what? He's the only prep school kid they drafted in the entire draft. So they clearly liked him a lot. So that is what it is. But we move on to Corey Jackson here out of Utah, 164th overall in the 5th round, 21 years of age, consistent hitter, slugging capabilities, had an over 1,000 OPS, 364 batting average, drew walks, really good pitch recognition, short, but, an effective swing, 20 stolen bases in 2025. So he's a good base runner, has good range in the field, plus arm, led all of the Pac-12 in assists defensively, consistently got on base and played exclusively shortstop, but scouts also believe he can work at third or second. The cons in his game, though, he struggles with the high heat. He struggles with fastballs. His high, again, another guy has a high floor, but a low ceiling, and the limited power profile, only 16 career homers. I like this kid a lot. Like, I think this is somebody where if the Yankees have figured out their development structure, and it feels like they have, because all of a sudden we're starting to see a lot more production from guys that in the past just haven't had that. I think Corey Jackson could end up outperforming most of the shortstops they drafted in the farm system. So at 21 years of age, I mean, you probably won't see the big leagues until he's 24, 25, but or maybe earlier. But I think the fact that he's more of like a gap type of guy, a gap hitter, and then he's got that speed to boot, I think he could be really effective in the minor leagues. So it's going to be the biggest thing, Gary, is going to be AA pitching. Struggling with the high heat, you're going to see a lot of that in AA pitching. So we'll see what ends up happening. But I really like this pick in the 5th round.
Yeah, so it's interesting because you read the pros, right, and you see consistent hitter, but then all of a sudden you read the cons and it says, well, he is very inconsistent with high velocity. Well, in the college game, they do see high velocity all the time, right, especially in the pack. So it's interesting for both of those to happen because they just seem like polar opposites. But I will tell you, not all cons are the worst thing in the world. They're just not. And when you look at a player and they tell us slugging is the biggest issue with someone's profile, but they have great plate discipline, that tells me that he at least has the maturity of understanding where he's good inside the zone and where he's not. I think our biggest problem with the Yankees, if you look at our lineup, right, and I know we're supposed to be talking about him, but let's just use a comparison. Most of the players that we complain about in the Yankees lineup this year or any year before is that they just didn't make any adjustments. They just didn't have enough discipline. They were chasing pitches. We talk about chase rate all the time. Most of the players who are inconsistent at this level in the major leagues, they chase pitches outside the zone. They just do. It was actually Anthony Volpe's, our biggest gripe. It was my biggest gripe with Anthony Volpe. It wasn't the glove. It wasn't the arm. It wasn't him getting caught stealing all the time. It was none of those things. It was his ability to swing at strikes. And this player in Corey Jackson doesn't have that problem. So yeah, does he struggle with high velocity? Sure, but that will develop. It just will. He went in the 5th round. They're not using a ton of leverage with this pick. I have no doubt in my mind that he's going to figure this out. Will he be the starting shortstop or a starter for the Yankees 2 or 3 years from now? I'm not going to make that wager, but I will tell you, Jake, this is one of those players where maybe another organization will see a ton of value in a player who's performing for the Yankees in the minor leagues. This is one of those guys who could be in the minor leagues for 6 or 7 years, and he's Rule 5. Very, very, very possible.
Yeah, I mean, that's also the thing is you really just got to draft. It's actually kind of weird because when you look at like other sports, you just draft the guys that you want, right? You just go after the guys that you need. With baseball, it's different because they have a certain slot for how much money can be spent. And in order to sometimes, because you also have to sign these guys because they can also walk. Because of that, sometimes you have to play around a little bit and underslot is what they call it. Drafting a guy who is going to essentially cost less in a certain spot so you can spend more. It's a really interesting thing to have to balance that. But I do think that they were able to find a good player in Corey Jackson here in the 5th round. And I do think I think they sign everybody. I don't think they're going to have an issue with that, but we'll see.
Sounds like George Lombard Jr., doesn't it? And mind you, we know this is not George Lombard Jr., but that's sort of what was the takeaway on George is that, all right, the power numbers just aren't there. It hasn't developed. And you've long been saying, Jake, don't fall in love with the power game at the A ball level, at rookie ball. Don't fall in love with it. Look at AAA, how they've developed as time's gone on. You want to see glimpses of the power game. You don't want a dude to just show up and he's going to hit 30 at all levels. That's a phenom, okay? That doesn't come around very often. That's the Bryce Harper, Juan Soto's. But the rest of these prospects who are normal people who eventually develop into something great, the power tool is probably the tools you want to show up last. So I have no problem with this kid.
Yeah, no, I definitely hear you there. I think really also these guys are desperately trying to navigate the tough nature that is the minor leagues. Not everybody can swing the way they did in college. You know, things change. And so there is a development curve. And I do think oftentimes you'll see sometimes guys realize, I could hit 40 home runs, but I don't want to hit 180, you know? And so they have to kind of change their whole approach around. And then some guys even try to over pursue having more pop and, you know, being valued in the organization, and they press, and you don't want to see that. So, but yeah, I like Corey Jackson there. And then in the 6th round, they went with Notre Dame right-hander Rory Fox.
What a name.
Yeah, I like the name. All right, so what are we getting with Rory here? Well, we're getting a guy who could be a potential back end of the rotation starter. He's got a good fastball that goes from 93 to 96, good control, low walk rate, has 3 off-speed pitches, a slider, change, and a curve that he does a really nice job of mixing well. He's 6'3", 200, so again, on more of the bigger side there, he can kind of work into that frame as well. I thought this was an interesting tidbit in his scouting report. Former two-way player. He actually played shortstop as well. So he has room to grow into that frame. He's lauded for his top-notch work ethic. Like, so much so that they see this guy as, maybe in a lot of cases, it wouldn't work out, or, he's going to have a low ceiling. But because of how hard this guy works, he could actually end up, surpassing that. But he did miss time in 2023 and 2024 due to undisclosed injuries, which I hate that. I really don't like when I don't know what's going on with a player. But have to imagine the Yankees have that, information, so it is what it is. He's inconsistent with that change in curve in that repertoire. So you can mix it well, but, if you don't know how to throw it, well, that's a different story. And he's really...
you and I can try to throw a changeup, but if it's not good, then do we really throw changeups? I don't know.
And then, this is kind of more so my preference, because you and I both talk about this. It is fine if you're a starting pitcher. He has weak contact reliance to a fault almost. Doesn't really go for the swing and the miss, but that can get you length. That can Cody Poteet you to 6 innings, and that's totally fine. But the big one here is, I just think for him, he is a guy that if he's going to work harder than everybody else, I'm betting on that guy. That's just the reality of it. If he's got good enough stuff to stick around in the minors, the thing that'll separate him from everyone else is that work ethic. And that's what's going to ultimately keep his ceiling a lot higher than maybe it should be.
Yeah, and when you mentioned the pitch mix, so Rory Fox, like what to think of this player, I'm going to be honest with you. I'm looking at a player I think could be moved into the bullpen. And I know that part of what would scare you with that is a player we just read earlier is he's reliant on contact. That's not necessarily what you want to hear, but I'm going to sort of chase that and say, all right, you guys are saying he's reliant on it. I'm going to assume that's a choice that he's making actively, because when they mention his stuff as the pros, like he has a laundry list of pros, and a lot of it is command with his fastball, right? Command with 2 or 3 different pitches, has a great mix. I think when you're looking at a player who's 93 to 96, you eliminate some of those pitches, you eliminate the curveball, maybe you eliminate the changeup, and you go a fastball slider guy, maybe you work in a wrinkle with a cutter or sinker, you may be looking at a Johnny Lowe type guy where 93, 96, couple years of development might be 98, 99. That's what I'm looking for. So yeah, not a ton of risk that you're taking, of course, in the 6th round, 194th overall. But when they say this kid works harder than arguably any other player in the draft, I have reason to believe he and Matt Blake are going to get in the lab. Of course, he's got to get to the big leagues first and foremost. But what we see with the Yankees, they develop arms. If there's one thing the Yankees do, it's that. So when you say you're inconsistent, you've got 4 or 5 pitches, but you're inconsistent with 2 of them, why don't we go ahead and eliminate those pitches and try to pitch and hit a glove rather than pitching to a bat? So yeah, I love this idea of him moving to the bullpen. I don't know how many back end of the rotation guys the Yankees can possibly develop. I think this is one of those guys who flexes his way out to the pen.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. It's 6th pick in the draft, or 6th round pick in the draft. So, that is what it is. This next guy, I actually really like his profile. Kind of reminds me of a Billy Hamilton, a Homer Bush, even some Brett Gardner.
So he flies.
Richie Bonomolo Jr. from Alabama. Okay, 224th overall, 7th round, contact lefty, speed received a 70 out of 80 grade from scouts. So he could be a premier base stealer, good center field feel and instincts, likely to remain there. I'll stop right there. Love to hear that. I cannot stand when they're like, yeah, he's in center field, but he's got no idea what he's doing. Like, okay, well, why is he in center field? So that's good.
You say he's from the Bronx?
He is from the Bronx. He is a Bronx native.
Okay.
He gets on base. He has good plate discipline, 416 on base percentage. He came up in some huge spots for Alabama in the SEC, had, some serious clutch moments. So that's something to keep in mind. He projects as a low-end starter or like a fourth outfielder in the big leagues from, the information that I gathered. And really his cons, while there's not a ton of them because there wasn't a ton on this guy, he's got limited power, only 8 home runs in 2025. He's really a gap hitter, not a threat to go yard. The average arm that he has is going to limit him from being just an outfielder by trade. He's really a center fielder or a left fielder. Right field is not going to be his strong suit, but this is a high floor, low ceiling player. He's in his 20s, so we could see this guy up there, kind of like how, you saw like a Duke Ellis. He could end up being kind of like that pinch runner type of guy and then maybe work his way into like one of those, kind of util roles. But I like him. I like the pick. I think going out and getting like deviating away from what you normally do, going out and getting a base stealer, going out and getting somebody that can really be a threat with that speed. I like at least having one of those guys in your draft class. So the cool thing is that he's a Bronx native, but I like Richie a decent amount here.
Yeah, and he's one of those guys where not every draft pick has to be like a huge toolbox. Like it doesn't have to be 6'4", runs like the wind, has a light tower power. Sometimes guys are just good at one thing and they master a certain craft and they're just not going to touch a certain area of the game, right? And one player that's like that obviously is Steven Kwan from Cleveland, is that the power game is never developed. Didn't need to, right? He's going to be excellent in his area. Now, is this Steven Kwan? No. However, there's value in a player that you can trust to go field his position. Maybe a Jason Dominguez comes off the field because you don't trust him defensively, in the championship series. Richie can go out there and cover for you, right? Maybe a Giancarlo Stanton is on base or whoever else is DHing for us is on base, and we need to trust somebody to get from first to scoring position for a clutch at bat later in a game. This guy can do that. So, not every player has to project as a superstar. He absolutely won't be one. But there's value in utility players. There's value in understanding maybe to drop down a bunt. This kid's going to be able to do that for you. There's value. The Yankees they're still scoring a ton of runs. We're doing all the sexy stuff. Could we have more star power? Sure. But best case scenario, the Yankees go and accomplish that stuff. You still need guys like this, right? So love the fact that you see a guy who can run getting into the system. It is showing somewhat that the Yankees aren't comfortable just drafting a bunch of guys who are trying to hit 42 homers and strike out 200 times. Not every player has to go about it that way.
It doesn't even feel like they were interested in power this year. Because
it didn't feel like it, right?
Yeah. This, in a way, this is kind of a departure from what the Yankees normally do, and I think it started last year. So it does point to kind of what I've been hearing and what I've been reading about how the Yankees have kind of prioritized different things in the farm system, and they're starting to see results from it. But we move on to the 8th round here, 254 overall. Mac Heuer, right-handed pitcher
body
from Texas Tech. Oh, well, you're not kidding. 6'5", 265 pounds. This dude is a unit. Lots of high leverage experience at Texas Tech, so that's good. His fastball can touch 98. He had a 37% whiff rate in 2025. He's projected as a back end of the rotation starter or reliever. Now, the issues with him are that, his ERA was 6.28, not great. His secondary pitches are not good, and he has serious command issues, averaging 4.3 walks per 9 innings. So this, to me, you're taking a flyer on a guy who looks the part, definitely passes the eye test. And if you can develop him, I mean, you got a guy that could last a while with that body composition. So, and he's missing bats. So there is something to be said there. You're doing enough where you're getting a 37% whiff rate, but you have a high ERA. There's some fine tuning that can be done to turn him into a decent player. And keep in mind, 8th round, I'm pretty sure, was Will Warren. So don't just assume an 8th round pick can't make the big leagues. We'll see what ends up happening. have no issue with this pick. Aside from that, I mean, I don't have any extra thing to add.
Yeah, so this is the type of guy where, again, with our first round pick, we said it's always good to have the tools and then try to mesh something, right? And mesh that into something. This is that, right? This is a player, low risk pick. He wasn't picked high because he struggles, right, with the control. There aren't going to be players, there aren't going to be a ton of guys at least in Major League Baseball's draft where you're like, yeah, he really struggles to hit the glove, right? When a catcher sets up outside, he struggles to get it out there. Well, you're not going to go high in the draft. That's just what comes with the territory. However, if there's one thing the Yankees can do is fix the mechanics, which this tends to be about mechanics, and this is somewhat of a project. But when you fix the mechanics and you're actually talking about a high velocity guy, this guy, based on his body style, 6'5", 265, he's a candidate to hit triple digits. 2 or 3 years from now, we may be looking at a guy throwing 100 miles an hour routinely. That's what you want to see. And by the way, Jake, it feels like the Yankees are going about their business a certain way. They're trying to shore up the utility spots with draft picks, shore up potential back end of the rotation and bullpen pieces with draft picks. It seems to be their play. I know last year they was just all starting pitcher, and everyone thought, okay, Volpe is going to be the future. It's not going to be an issue. But now the Yankees seem to be going about their utility situation a different way. It seems like they're trying to develop a lot of Perazzas, and maybe one of them will stick. So very interesting, but as you know, love the body style, love the velocity. There's spots for Tim Hill, a little craft lefty, craft righty, throw 92, 93. There's value in that, but there's also something to be said for a guy who throws 99 who can just blow you away. So I'm looking forward to how this progresses. Again, year or two from now, we may look up and say, oh, that's a guy, that's a candidate right there who can fill this Johnny Lowe situation that we've got going on in our bullpen in 2025. So I'm excited for it.
Yeah, no, that's the beauty of this, right? That's why we do it. At some point, we'll be talking about Ben Hess and, Bryce Cunningham and be like, hey, remember we were just talking about them on a Yankees Unloaded episode? But
yeah, and we don't care, by the way, about high ERAs. I mean, the Yankees just traded for Fernando Cruz from Cincinnati. His ERA was just a balloon. He gets here. He's one of our best pitchers, obviously down right now, but you guys get the concept. The Yankees aren't afraid to take flyers on players with high ERAs. That's typically when you go to a park, you go grab a hot dog and you look up at the Jumbotron, you see a guy's ERA is 7, you just associate he sucks. He's not good and he can't be fixed. The Yankees view it differently, at least on the mound. They can use some work developing position players. I think we can all agree. But if there's one thing the Yankees and Matt Blake and Brian Cashman and whoever else, they tend to fix this issue. So I have no doubt in my mind this will not be a problem long term.
Yeah, I will say next up we have Blake Gillespie, and he already signed the deal. Okay, I'm very excited about this guy. Okay, I think I sent you. I don't remember when I did, but I sent you a tweet about him, and this guy, he led all of the D1 in 3-pitch strikeouts. He led all of D1 in strikeouts, right? He was third in the country in chase rate at 41.8%. A Georgia transfer to Charlotte, elite slider. He used it 61% of the time, and he had an effective fastball, constantly throwing strikes, 37% whiff rate there. And then you have, him throwing 83 and a third innings, and he's building up 99 strikeouts. I like this guy a lot. You have the built up starter stamina there with the 83 and a third innings. That's a lot for a college pitcher. But I think he's got legitimate starter potential. Now, I also see a high leverage reliever, and I've been seeing him compared to Dellin Betances on Twitter. And you know what? I like it because people forget Betances was a starter to begin with, and he turned into a reliever. But he was a top pitching prospect and starting pitching prospect at that. So I look at somebody like Blake Gillespie here who has just an absolutely dominant slider. I mean, when you think about this, he had 99 strikeouts, okay, with that slider. So it's pretty crazy when you think about what he was able to accomplish. But the cons for me, the over reliance on the slider, kind of limit the effectiveness of being a starter. And he doesn't have a good third pitch that he can really trust. But at the same time, let's see. He's going to start what? In single A, low A? I think he'll have plenty of time to really hone in his craft. And if he does make it to the big leagues and isn't traded away, I think he could be a really good piece for the Yankees and maybe be even one of those kind of Michael King. You talk about
starter, oh my God, I was going to cut you off literally a minute ago, and I decided to let you finish. And I hear the name Michael King. I can't take it anymore. Is this Michael King? Probably not. However,
probably not.
Michael Kings don't just fall out of trees, right?
Yes.
But having said that, there's a reason why the Yankees, at one point or another, were like, Michael King's this guy who we can just kind of flip out to the bullpen. He'll go 2 or 3 innings. He certainly has that type of stamina to do it, but wipe out slider. That's what you watch with Michael King. That's what makes him as good as he is. Now, of course, you're seeing the comeback sinker that really complements that, and you're seeing right now with Blake Gillespie is that he doesn't have a third pitch. As you mentioned, Jake, plenty of time to hone that in. Plenty of time. But you don't want to have to work on missing bats. He doesn't have to work on this. He just doesn't. He misses bats. And they were mentioning he's building up his stamina, which tells me he hasn't been a starter his whole life. He just hasn't. This has been something that's developed. And what that tells me, Jake, is this is someone who's got a fresh arm. That's what I'm looking for. Hey, when you want a guy who's not overworked, someone who can go starter innings, but he's got a wipeout slider. And if the issue with this player is an over-reliance on his slider, you mean to tell me your pitching coach, and we've got arguably the best pitching coach in Major League Baseball, you think he's not going to tell him, hey, you're relying on this pitch too much. It's just not going to work. He's not going to figure that out. Of course he will. He figured this exact same thing out with Fernando Cruz. You're relying too much on that four-seam fastball. It's a good pitch, but your splitter is your bread and butter. That's why your ERA is 7. He shows up to the Yankees. It's another story for him. He's a different player. So for Blake Gillespie, I'm looking at this guy and saying he'll develop more than likely a third pitch. We did the same thing with Rodon this year. Didn't have a third pitch, by the way. We gave him $180 million. Didn't have one, right? He had a little changeup that he was, remember, beginning of this year, he was experimenting with a changeup, and we didn't love it. Then all of a sudden, we started seeing the sinker. We started seeing a little bit of a cutter action. So all these tell me the story of a player easily in this system. They can say, all right, he misses bats. He's built up as a starter. This is one of those guys, in my opinion, Jake, there's a high ceiling to be had here, right? There's a very high ceiling. I'm very excited about this pick.
This is my favorite pick.
So there you have it. Yep.
I love this. Yeah, I love this pick. The more and more I dove into it, I was just like, hold on a sec. So he's 21, so he'll probably be behind a lot of 21-year-olds, but here's why. He had 100.1 innings pitched this past year, right? Gary, he had 23 2/3 the year before, 7 1/3, 16 2/3, 11 2/3, and 12 2/3. So you're telling me he finally gets a chance to be a starter. Mind you, he started 4 games in Georgia. That's why he transferred. He finally gets a chance to be a starter. He goes 7-4 with a 2.24 ERA and a .87 WHIP, right? And he has 131 strikeouts, 91 of which come from a devastating, as you said, wipeout slider in 100 1/3 innings pitched. Yes, I very much like this kid a lot. I think this is not the last time we'll hear of him. I think if I were to put my money on anybody, really kind of shocking this draft class and kind of coming out and being a standout player, I think Blake Gillespie is going to make the majors. I think he wears pinstripes. We probably see him in the bullpen, but I don't care where he is. I think he's going to end up being an impact player for this team, and he gets me excited, man. There's something about this guy.
Is it a little Sergio Romo? Now, mind you, obviously Sergio Romo was somewhat 90, 91 miles an hour, and this is not that. But if they leave him in the bullpen, when they say he relies on his slider too much, if he's a one-inning guy, I don't really think you can rely on your slider too much. I don't see that. If you're missing bats and that's not a problem, I'm sure they'll probably work on a secondary pitch, give a little wrinkle there, something to tunnel off of it. But if he ends up in the rotation or they build him up as a starter, then I think you can have that conversation of overusing a pitch. Because, yeah, as a starter, you're not going to be able to flip sliders all day. So I'm excited about this kid.
Yeah, and shout out, I want to give credit where credit's due. At Jacob B Speaks, I think that is the tweet that I sent you from him.
Yes, it is.
He's a big Yankee fan, and he tweeted out, at Yanks, draft this stud from Charlotte, and then he posted it. By the way, he's from Kalamazoo, Michigan, so maybe this is actually the star, the next Jeter star, and not Volpe. But anyway, all jokes aside, he threw the program's second no-hitter. He did not give up a home run, not even one home run, 0.8 home runs in 9 innings, okay? A 1.7 walks in 9 innings, 11.9 Ks per 9 innings, right? So we're talking about a guy who realized maybe he wasn't dealt the best deck. He didn't pitch all that well at Georgia, didn't really get a lot of opportunities, right? And so he transfers and he goes to Charlotte and he throws one of the only 2 no-hitters in program history and absolutely lets his presence be known. The reason why I found it funny, Gary, is Jacob posted this, and I'm not kidding you. This was before the Yankees draft. The Yankees drafted him almost right after he posted it. It was like 20 minutes.
It's probably Brian Cashman tweeting to himself. It's really Brian's account.
Jacob B Speaks is Brian.
Yeah, it's really just Brian. But I mean, it's a great call. This is a late bloomer. Just somebody who didn't figure out it's no different than someone who figured out what they're going to do with their life in their 30s, right? You spent your 20s doing whatever, right? Jumping from job to job, and next thing you know, you find your passion later in life. I think this is one of those cases. So I think we're both excited about it. I think it's interesting. This is both our favorite player in this draft.
Yep. See, it doesn't always have to be just cut and dry, first round, second round, third round. Sometimes you just fall in love with the 9th round. I mean,
it's never our first round picks we love anyway, so let's be real.
Yeah, I mean, we liked Ben Hess, but I was way higher on Bryce Cunningham last year. And I did love the 10th round pick last year, Joe De Los Santos, who I brought up.
I don't remember if I loved Ben Hess, but Cunningham definitely. I think anytime I look at a player, bigger bodies, yes, but I need to see the high velocity, high spin, all those things. So, yeah. Who we got next? Are we in our 10th round already?
Yeah, this is the last one.
Sweet.
So we got Connor McGinnis from Houston, 314 overall. Now, I know they drafted more players after this. They have UDFAs that are interesting. We wanted to keep it just top 10. Okay? No offense to those guys. And you know what? I hope those guys prove us wrong and they end up being better than anybody would have thought. But
they didn't prove it. Well, I mean, how long our video can't be 2 hours talking about a 16th round pick. So
exactly.
They understand.
We didn't really have a choice. So, okay, 10th round, 314, Connor McGinnis, second baseman out of Houston. Here are the pros. He's left-handed, strong slugging bat, over 1,000 OPS, great discipline, can draw walks, find ways on base, good speed on the base paths, versatile, can play second, short, and outfield, and absolutely annihilated JUCO competition. But the cons are this. His injury history cost him 24 games this year. He has limited power, only 4 homers this year, really just a gap hitter, and another high floor but lower ceiling type of guy. He's another one that should shoot up the farm system, but I don't think he profiles as a starter in the MLB based on what I was reading.
Yeah, so again, at least they didn't play any games with shortstop, second base. The Yankees think he can stay there. But this is sort of a player that I look at if this goes really well. They mentioned that he can hit, right, left-handed guy. I'm thinking best case scenario, this could turn into a Scooter Gennett situation where you're looking up at a guy who can hit 280, not going to have a ton of pop, but gap-to-gap power. Hey, I like it. I don't have a problem with it at all. He's versatile. Again, hunting, and this is a JUCO product, as you mentioned. JUCO products are ready to play. These are the type of guys where it's almost when you go the junior college route, you're almost setting yourself up for a guy who's going to show up quickly, right? He's played with grown men, right? same age as anyone else in college. And I played junior college baseball. It is very rugged. It's not as sexy as playing at some of these universities. Very reminiscent of playing in the minor leagues. So these are the type of guys who are ready to go right away. This is best case scenario, I think, for the Yankees. This is one of those what Peraza was supposed to be this year. Peraza's hit tool was supposed to be much higher. Obviously, it's somewhat behind, but the glove's there, as you mentioned, Jake. And if Peraza was able to hit, that's sort of what you're getting, a left-handed Peraza, which can be very valuable to a team spending $300 million. And that's our goal. It seems Brian Cashman's goal. Hey, maybe people are upset with the ceilings here on some of these players. Right, maybe rightfully so. I won't complain if you have a problem with it. But remember, if you've got 2 or 3 guys that are your utility players who can spin out to the outfield, we mentioned a speed lefty who can go out to the outfield, and you've got a guy in the infield here who can also play outfield, it's not looking like a $16 million DJ LeMahieu, right? It's not looking like what you see out of a back end of our rotation. We're paying $18.5 million on veterans to do these type of jobs that we're trying to develop. So I like this path that Brian's on. Maybe it's not the sexiest draft that you've ever seen, but if you hit on 2 or 3 of these utility position players, you can go spend big on your star free agent signing. So yeah, obviously they have to hit first for that to happen, but towards the back end of Aaron Judge's career, these guys need to be able to pull some weight for us to spend again.
I thought one funny thing here. So Connor McGinnis had the exact same batting average at Winchester in the JUCO ranks as he did this year at Houston, 343. So he's just consistent across the board. 343 on base percentage at Houston, 450 on base percentage at Winchester was 446. His slugging went from 529 to 610. So
they still call it limited power. Does any listeners of ours care? Limited power, is that a concern of yours? And the Yankees,
you could develop power too.
Yeah, but is limited power really a problem? Right? You can either hit or you can't, right? And would we like to see home runs? Yeah, it's great. And the guys who hit home runs, you see how much money Juan Soto wasn't paid to just get on base. He's also paid to do that while hitting home runs. So there's certainly value in the homer, but not everybody has to go about their business that way. As I mentioned before, this is a utility player, somebody who's not a problem, but if you want to upgrade, you certainly can do that. But as you see with the Yankees, like you actually see with our roster, we've got some holes. We've got a hole at third base, right? Jazz Chisholm, yeah, he was stuck at third base. Then we've got DJ LeMahieu at second. He had to play there because we didn't have anybody else to throw at second base. Well, if you develop somebody who's got a hit tool, but he's got limited power, great defense, got a strong arm, wouldn't you rather have those tools than somebody you pay a lot of money to potentially hit 8 to 10 more home runs? I'd take these guys.
He didn't have an error, by the way, at Houston in the field. So
right. So
that's 31 games, no errors. That's not bad.
Knows what he's doing with the glove, which is more than we can say about a lot of our top prospects. Obviously, Jason Dominguez, Anthony Volpe, 2 players right now who are struggling with the glove. So it would be nice to get some overall baseball players in the system, whether or not they have a high ceiling or not.
No, I agree. But that is everybody, at least everybody that we're going to cover. So
maybe we fit in an hour.
Yeah, we fit 10 prospects in an hour, and we focused a lot on this guy right here, Dax Kilby, who I'm sure a lot of people are pretty excited about. It already seems like the Yankee fan base is really excited about him. I get it. I was a little underwhelmed. I think that's the way I would put it. Overall, I think this draft is playing it safe in a lot of respects. I think they maybe are kind of going out of their comfort zone, but actually staying in their comfort zone with Dax Kilby. That's just the type of player they go after. We've seen it with Volpe. We've seen it with Lombard Jr., But as far as the rest of the draft, you said it best. It's a lot of these kind of fringe starters, utility guys, and a lot of back end of the rotation, potential bullpen guys. But Blake Gillespie, remember the name. I think he is definitely the most exciting out of this group. And I hope we get to see him in pinstripes. I have a feeling we will, whether that's 3 years from now or whatever, who knows. But I think he is going to be very good.
Yeah, and if he's getting shelled, forget we ever said it.
Yeah, never said it.
Like the video.